My name is Marco. I'm a pro opera singer turned voice actor. You ask for it, you receive it. Today we're going to be listening to the Sumeru live symphony concert. I'm really excited to listen to this. This is a whole new soundscape for Genshin Impact. Also, some of you have been wondering where cursed Giga Chad Pikachu is. Well, he's right here saying, don't skip this video. I will know if you skip this video. Yes, we will. This is really cool. This is very much this Arabian Nights vibe, and in a lot of ways, even right off the bat, it reminds me a lot of the Maurice Ravel Shaherazade. It's a different soundscape. If you listen to a little bit of Movement 1, Azi, you can sort of hear this Arabian Nights, Tales of 1001 Nights. It kind of comes across a little bit. Here, check this out. Just a little bit. So a lot of this music that it borrows influence from this Middle Eastern Egyptian sound has a lot of flats and sharps, and there's a lot of augmented and diminished chords in there, and they all work alongside each other, and they create this So it's really interesting that we're immediately going there with Sumeru, and we're getting this vibe from that right off the bat. I love how clean Genshin Impact music is. It's one of the few soundtracks that uses a pure orchestra, and I think it's very interesting here to see the London Symphony Orchestra putting this together. And we're starting with an oboe and a harp, and now we're adding the clarinet, and we have this Western approach to this Middle Eastern sound. So we're alternating instruments, and then we have a little bit of the tremolo and the strings, which is to indicate a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue. Like, it sounds a lot like the Ravel, actually. And I think that, I know it's a climax right there, but that again in its own way is building tension, making us feel this edge of a little bit of insecurity and a little bit of curiosity. Like, what is this? What's going on? Why did they choose? They could have just done. There's a different effect there musically and emotionally that you hear. The saxophone has a sensuality to the sound, and I think it's really interesting. The saxophone wasn't invented until the 1840s by Adolphe Sax, which he was a Belgian. He was a Belgian musician, and his friend used the saxophone in 1844. His name was Georges Kastner, and the opera was Le Dernier Roi de Juda. And that was the first time that the saxophone had appeared in an orchestra, and since then it's been used. Obviously, it's not, I wouldn't say it's prominent in the orchestral instrumentation necessarily. And apparently the reason why the saxophone is not used frequently in an orchestra is because apparently it's too hard to blend in with the other instruments, and the timbre can be a little bit out of tune, and apparently it's simply too loud based on this article I found from Ludwig van in Toronto, which is really interesting. So it's cool to hear it in this, and I think it's evocative, right? There's a sensuality here. There's a mystery. I picture flowing garments and this feeling of vast open landscapes, which makes sense for Sumeru, and there is this elegance to the sound of a saxophone that is very hard to find in other woodwind instruments in the orchestra. So to have it in here, it's a real nod to sensuality and to exoticism and to sort of flair, which actually makes me think about another thing, and the fact that exoticism is very common in music. Musical exoticism is the evocation of a culture different from that of the composer, and it's very common. We hear this a ton with Giacomo Puccini when we think of something like La Fanciulla del West or Madama Butterfly. It's a composer who is Italian writing about the Wild West in the Americas, or writing about Japanese culture, what they perceive that music to sound like. It also, of course, occurs in literature and other things, and it's a form of representation in which people, places, and culture are depicted as foreign from the perspective of the composer and or the intended audience. You hear it with the Ravel Shaherazade and the Rimsky-Korsakov Shaherazade. These are all depicting scenes of the Arabian Nights. It's an interesting and common trope in classical music, which I think we're seeing here now with this music, and certainly I think also with Inazuma music, because it's different. And we also hear that with Mondstadt, for instance, too, because they're different from the culture of the composer. This is also interesting. I'm stopping a lot, but it's interesting to have a bass clarinet. I think there's one bass clarinet in every single orchestra. I used to play bass clarinet when I was a young kid, and so it's a lower sounding clarinet sound, of course, and it's interesting to hear that juxtaposed with the other woodwind of the saxophone. There's a warm tone that I think is evoking the sort of pyramids and desert and landscape that we see in Sumeru, which is very, very smart. That looks like interesting. Okay, so we're getting some sitar sound. I think it's so miraculous that we live in a world where we have the London Symphony Orchestra, or any orchestra, pulling from these traditional instruments like the sitar and incorporating them in this Western sound, but it gives the pedestal and it props up this authentic soundscape musically, which is so interesting, and we just don't hear it that often. And again, Genshin music is always sort of propping up these traditional instruments and using them in really evocative and I think deeply respectful ways, which is fantastic. It's also especially great to see, very traditional hand-used percussion instruments, which I think evokes the humanity and the richness and the depth of the culture as well. I don't know those two instruments in the back. If someone knows, please let me know. It's very strong, but also there's a gentility here too, which is really interesting. It just moves you, it feels like we're wind flowing through the trees. There's a dendro element attached to this somehow. It's very interesting. That cello there, there's that edge of danger, right? But there's also this dancing, flowing quality to this that is very, again, confident, very rich, and gives us the sensation of courage and there's a lot of mystery in this sound and a lot of suaveness and a lot of earthiness. It sounds like chase music. It sounds like battle music. It sounds like something where we're really feeling focused and determined and confident, and we're present, and it's very face forward. I also love that we're really giving this platform for these traditional instruments that I don't know the names of, that are very they're really pushing us forward with this. And I love that essentially they're also tiered, but obviously, so it's kind of amazing that it's set up like that, where we have the traditional orchestra in front like we normally do, and then in the back we have these traditional instruments, and I actually feel like they're all soloists that are sort of in a lot of ways like jazz, where we're highlighting and taking turns and mirroring each other, and then the strings are mirroring some of these instruments, and it's very cool because it's propping them up, putting them front and center, like I mentioned earlier. It's really, really fun to listen to. And then you hear that edge, bum, bum, bum. That's why I think it's battle music. I like this too. There's sort of repetitive motion and repetitive hitting and repetitive spinning and jumping and twirling. It's very, it encourages a feeling of momentum. Yeah, nice. That's fantastic. I'm really, really, really excited to dive into more Sumeru and listen to some of this evocative, delicious music. And really, I think for all of us, this music allows us to expand our soundscape and what we know and what we feel we know about music from this particular region. This Middle Eastern Indian influence. And I think that it's really, again, it's a celebration of culture that Genshin Impact does so unbelievably well. And I think this is going to open the minds and the spirits and so much of the soul of people listening to this. And the beautiful thing is that you're going to be influenced by music that you would probably never hear in your day-to-day if maybe you weren't from that area, or even in general. I think about Liwe and I think about Inazuma and this music that I've started listening to so actively that I never would have necessarily heard in my day-to-day, either listening to video game music soundtracks or just going about my business during the day. So that's really exciting. And I'm really curious to hear the rest of this and to experience it more. And I'm sure, even Sumeru, just this lush, beautiful, probably hostile domain, and just seeing these really interesting characters come to life through the music is going to be really fun and different and unique, and I'm really curious to see where things go, and I know you are too. I am curious what you're excited about when it comes to this music and when it comes to Sumeru in general, and if you're seeing this 6 months after Sumeru has come out, what's your perspective on Sumeru, having played it and having experienced it, and how do you feel connected to this music having experienced it? So as always, thanks a ton. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.